Hi everyone, this is our channel, Meet the Real Story. Please like, share and subscribe.
Ever since I was a child, I adored horror movies. Scary stories, old legends and myths. While most kids were into singers and actors and movie posters, I loved vampires, the one-eyed cyclops, everything related to horror and gore. Monster movies, thrillers, the supernatural, the mysterious, and the unexplained. Because these things only happened in movies. Or so I thought. But what if they were to happen in real life? Let me tell you a story where something like this happened in real life. My name is Marlene, and I'm 15 years old. Like I said, unlike the other kids, I loved horror movies, zombies, vampires, and ghosts. The only one who shared my taste was my brother Stan, an oddly stylish guy with a strange character. Nevertheless, I liked him. There are a lot of scary monsters, of course, but to me, the werewolf was the scariest of them all. A werewolf is an ordinary person who has been bitten by a werewolf, which in turn causes him to become one too. A werewolf looks like you and me most of the time, but around the time of the full moon, that cursed person will transform into a monster with a taste, or should I say thirst, for human blood. My parents had gone to visit some relatives and stay with them for Christmas holidays, but I stayed home because I wanted to spend that time with my friends. Stan stayed home with me for similar reasons. One night, he came home looking tired, and his hand was bleeding. When I asked him what had happened, he said that some wild dog had attacked him and bit him. I was worried that it might get infected without Mom here to cleanse and bandage it, but he assured me that he was okay. I cleaned it the best I could and put a light bandage around it. The next day was a cold day, but we played outside and had fun together with our friends. At the end of the day, Stan said that he was feeling tired and went straight to his room without saying another word. When I went inside, I could hear him crying in his room, so I went in and asked him if he was okay. Again, he said that he was fine, but I was thinking that maybe the bite on his hand wasn't from a dog, but from some rabid animal. That would have been really bad. Or maybe from a werewolf. That would be even worse. I began to worry and started watching him more closely, just to make sure he was okay. I noticed that he began hiding his hand in his jacket pockets, wearing sunglasses at night, and was always tired. I could tell that something wasn't right. Then, one night, I heard strange sounds coming from his room, so I hurried to him. Stan, please tell me what's going on. Tell me the truth. What is wrong with you? I asked. And he said, really, I'm okay. I'm just hungry. Do we have any meat? Meat, I thought, as in bloody meat. Suddenly my imagination started running wild, and I began thinking to myself, oh my God, what if Stan was bitten by a werewolf? I checked the almanac and determined that the full moon was only 3 days away. I was scared out of my mind. What will happen if he changes when I'm here home alone? I felt like I was doomed to be killed by my own brother. I knew that the only way to kill a werewolf was with a silver bullet, or a silver dagger. But, one, where could I find one of those? And two, how could I kill my own brother? I must be losing my mind. My parents wouldn't be back for a week. Time passed, and the day of the full moon arrived. I knew I would have to face the person I loved the most in the world besides my parents, and either I would kill him, or he would kill me. It's a lose-lose situation. When my brother came home, he looked so strange. His eyes were darting around like a wolf, and he even smelled like one too. I pretended to be strong, but inside I was trembling, fearful of what this night might bring. I locked myself in my bedroom and waited for this night to pass quickly. I hoped. Then I heard Stan's door open, and I heard his light footsteps coming closer to my door. He knocked and asked if he could come in. Hesitantly, I opened the door. Hi, Stan. Is there something you need? I asked, and he said, I'm so tired. Then I saw his skin turning a grayish color. He was clutching his stomach. The transformation was about to begin. He made a sound like a snarl. Saliva was drooling from his mouth. Fortunately, I was holding a silver kitchen knife. Thank God Mom had some real silverware. She had gotten out for the holiday dinner. I had gone by the church that day and asked the priest to bless a jar of water I brought with me, and I had dipped my silver knife in that blessed holy water just before I had opened the door to confront Stan. I was ready to pounce before he could. "Forgive me, dear brother," I said. Then I pulled the knife back and got ready to thrust it forward to stab him in the stomach. At that instant, Dad suddenly came in through the front door and saw us, saw me with a knife in my hand, ready to run Stan through with it. "Marlene, what are you doing?" he asked. Staring at the knife in my hand, I shouted, "Dad, run! Stan is changing into a werewolf!" Then Stan unexpectedly fell down unconscious, looking very much human. Dad ran over to him and felt his forehead. "He has a fever," he said. "Look at his hand, Dad. He's been bitten by a werewolf," I cried. Dad looked at me as if I was crazy and said, "Nonsense, Marlene. It's just a dog bite." We took Stan to a doctor, who examined him and took some blood samples. He did indeed have rabies, also known as hydrophobia, I learned. I laughed, but then I told myself that this wasn't really funny. I almost convinced myself that my brother was a werewolf. If Dad had come a few seconds later, Stan might very well be dead by now. I was seconds away from murdering my own brother due to a runaway imagination. It's been 2 weeks now, and Stan has finished the shot treatment. He's getting better quickly. What about me, you ask? Well, I've stopped watching horror movies forever. Well, at least till next month. Every one of us has a talent. It may be singing beautifully, drawing artistically, writing poetically. We're all different. Our special talents make us happy. We are all unique in our own way, living in a world full of peace, love, and happiness. But what if our talent became our bane? Well, my talent did become my bane. Let me tell you how. My name is Jenny, and I'm 16 years old. I lived in a quiet neighborhood with my parents and my little brother Matthew. I didn't have a lot of friends or hobbies. I was only interested in social media, but I always had a feeling that I had something unique, something that distinguished me from others. Turned out I was right. It all started on my grandmother's birthday. My family and I were traveling to her home to celebrate the occasion. The road was narrow and bumpy, with a rocky shoulder on one side and a river on the other. Dad was driving too fast, so obviously, Mom was a bit worried. Conversely, Matthew was excited. It was raining so hard that day that Dad feared the weather might get even worse, so he was driving faster than he should have, to try to arrive at Grandma's house quickly. I was worried too, but for a slightly different reason. I had a feeling of impending doom on that trip. The rain got progressively worse. There was almost continuous lightning and thunder. Suddenly, we saw a big truck that had stopped on the road ahead of us. Mom screamed. Dad swerved to avoid hitting the truck and lost control of the car, which had gone on one of its sides and off the road into the river. It was the most frightening situation I had ever experienced in my whole life. We went underwater, and I felt as if we were in an aquarium. Dad was unconscious, and his forehead was bleeding. Mom was struggling, and Matthew was paralyzed with fear, his eyes tightly shut. Then, my vision went dark. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital bed, with a team of doctors around me. When I asked them about my family, the look on their faces told me that I was the sole survivor of that horrible accident. Several days had passed since the accident. I was having trouble sleeping. The doctors gave me some sleeping pills. They even tried hypnosis to help me sleep. Grandma came to visit me. She was very sad. She said I could come live with her. My whole life was turned upside down in an instant. A police officer at the hospital was kind enough to drive Grandma and I to her home. After he dropped us off, something strange happened. In a fraction of a second, I had a vision, a momentary premonition that something bad was going to happen to him. I saw him trying to catch a thief, and suddenly crashing into another car. So I thanked him for the ride, and told him to take care of himself, to be very careful. He smiled, and said that he will. The very next day, as I was watching the news, I saw a report that that very same kind officer had died in a car crash, just like my premonition. Grandma was upset when I told her what had happened. I didn't tell her that I had foreseen his death, because I knew that she wouldn't believe me. In fact, she might have even thought I was crazy. This strange turn of events happened again, with one of our neighbors, who visited us one day. She was a kind, lovely woman. I had a premonition that she would die in her kitchen due to a gas line explosion. I urged her to be careful with the cooking gas, because it could be so dangerous. But she just laughed and said that she loved cooking, and that there's nothing to fear. Grandma got a bit upset with me for making a big deal out of nothing. She said that I was just a little paranoid due to the accident, and that my imagination was getting way too overactive, and that I shouldn't try to scare people. Needless to say, the neighbor that I had warned did indeed die in a gas line explosion 4 days later. Coincidence? I think not. Am I somehow causing these incidents to happen? I couldn't help but think that I was somehow linked to the whole thing. I searched the internet for any information about this phenomena, and I found that it was common in people who had been involved in a traumatic experience, especially almost drowning incidents. I read a research that said that parts of the subject's brain would become very active. After our neighbor's accident, my aunt and uncle came to visit us. I had missed them a lot, but yet again, I had a premonition that they would have an accident going home, causing their car to explode and crash into the river. 2 days later, they were preparing to leave and head home. I begged them to stay one more night, but they said that they couldn't because they had work the next day. I told Grandma about my premonition, and she scolded me, told me to stop this nonsense. She thought it was my overactive imagination again. My uncle came in as Grandma was scolding me and asked me what was wrong. I wanted to say, "Nothing important, Uncle. Just premonitions of doom, that's all." But I didn't. I went to sleep instead and had a dream that Uncle was going to get run over by a car. Suddenly, I woke up to the sound of Uncle and Grandma's voices. They were talking about me, and it was raining outside. Uncle stood up and said that he had to get something from his car. I sat up straight and shouted, "No, don't go." Uncle said, "Jenny, it'll be fine. I'll just get something from the car." I couldn't dissuade him from going, so I followed him out. Uncle went out to his car and was standing by its door, which was facing the road. Then I saw the headlights. A car was coming down the road, driving towards us. I saw the car hit a flooded spot on the road and suddenly began sliding sideways, right towards Uncle. Instinctively, I made a decision to try and protect him. I had to at least try. I jumped in front of the swerving car. The driver saw me and tried to regain control. Suddenly, I felt a warm sunshine mysteriously coming down from the sky amidst the rain, and I felt calm and safe. And I had one final premonition before everything went dark.
Most people dream of being rich and famous with a happy family, a prestigious job, and a huge villa. Achieving these dreams needs patience and hard work. I'm not interested in the meaning or value of a job itself. The only thing I care about is the salary it pays. I want my dream job to pay a high salary. That's all I ask. My name is Raji, and I am 21 years old. I have had only one dream my whole life: to be rich and to have a prestigious, high-paying job. It has been my dream since I was a boy because I don't want to waste my time in a low-paying job. I searched the newspaper for jobs with a good salary, any kind of job. One day, I found a catchy advertisement: elderly companion needed. The caregiver salary was quite good, and it seemed like an easy job, so I went to the interview. The interview session made me feel a little uneasy. I tried to remain calm by focusing on that nice salary the job paid. The interviewer was an old man, who even introduced me to his sons. He said that I have to take care of their invalid father, feeding him, changing his bed sheets, and giving him his medications. They were about to show me a list of the job duties, but I interrupted them before they could finish their sales spiel. "I'll take it," I stated simply and directly. They stood there with their mouths opened and then shrugged their shoulders. Okay, I got the job. So I lived there with their father, I'll call him the old man, in his villa. I sometimes felt that there was someone else there with us, but maybe I was just seeing shadows. The man himself was somewhat queer. I would sometimes wake up to find him looking at me intently and smiling strangely. One early morning at like 3 a.m., I heard a noise and went to his room, only to find his bed empty. Strange. Then suddenly, I sensed someone behind me, and I turned around quickly to see him holding a knife. He tried to attack me, but I managed to fend him off and pushed him away. Then I dashed out of the villa. I never came back. I told myself I didn't want to die on my dream job. Failing at my first attempt to find my dream job didn't stop me from trying again. I soon found a new one, which was an assistant clothes designer. The salary was even better than the last job. I went to the interview, and the interviewer, the clothes designer himself, seemed a little odd. I couldn't discern his, her, its gender because it had long hair and a soft voice, but on balance, I decided to call it a man. I told myself that I shouldn't judge people from their appearance, so I started my new job as his assistant. I told him that I was enthusiastic about the job, but I got the heebie-jeebies when he suddenly took my hand in his and just held it while looking at me. Was this guy homosexual? I wondered. I decided to ignore his odd behavior. It's all about the salary, you know. I have to say that he was very good at his work, and I met a lot of celebrities while working in his workshop. One day, our workload was particularly heavy due to an international festival in town. I was tidying up a new dress when he suddenly put his hand on the small of my back and asked me if I want to lie down with him. That heebie-jeebies feeling suddenly returned, and I pushed him away and dashed out the door while shouting back, "I suspected you might try that from the beginning, but I ignored my premonitions. Bye!" He called after me and said that I didn't know what I was missing, but I shouted back that I would live without it. Back to the want ads to look for another dream job. I searched for a few months before coming upon another job as a coffee bean collector. The salary was even better than the last job, so I was perfectly happy with that. I went to the interview. This time, the interviewer seemed to be a normal, welcoming kind of guy. "I hope you are ready to take this job," he said. "I surely am. I'm enthusiastic about it," I said. He explained the job duties. I had to collect coffee beans, wash and clean them, and put them in sacks for transporting. He said that I had to sign a legal contract that I couldn't break or get out of before its end date. "I am totally ready," I said. "Where do I sign?" He smiled kindly and escorted me to his office. I signed the contract without even reading it. It's all about the salary, you know. I couldn't wait to start putting away that high salary so I could start getting rich. He led me to the work area. While walking, I was imagining gently picking those fragrant coffee beans in those sunny, wide-open fields. Boy, was I surprised when we stopped where a small herd of elephants were standing idly, swinging their tails and trunks back and forth. Some laborers were standing beside them, knee-deep in elephant poop and hand-picking coffee beans out of it, and putting the beans into sacks. I turned back to look at the hiring interviewer. He was guffawing and said, "Sorry, pal, you signed the contract. Too late to back out now." Then he walked away, still laughing. Please, God, don't let this be my dream job.
Some people are born to have great destinies, like being a famous scientist like Einstein or a famous actor or athlete. Other people are born to enjoy great things like love, riches, or glamour. And then there are the rest of us, those who struggle all their lives just to eke by. If we should by chance latch on to a great opportunity, it will likely be very difficult to hold on to it long enough for success. We can only take our best shot, or give up and not even try. My story is about a hero. Perhaps you have met, made fun of, or loved someone like him at one time or another in the past. My name is Sam, and I am 17 years old. I live with my parents and my twin brother, Randy. Dad was a carpenter, and Mom was a housewife, but Randy is the real hero of my story. You see, he was autistic. Unfortunately, society attaches a stigma to autistic children because they seem to live in their own little world, in a kind of private self-isolation, as if quarantined from life. Due to our family's poverty and lack of access to good medical care, we never even realized that Randy was autistic. We just thought he was introverted and naturally quiet and withdrawn. I was the exact opposite, extroverted and gregarious. For the most part, we left Randy to his own devices in facing his hard life in his early childhood. When Randy and I were young, We would play in the street, and I would be responsible for protecting him because there were also some children that considered him weird and consequently mocked him a lot. I thought of him as a little angel because he was so quiet, and he was such a dreamer. He loved music and would often close his eyes while listening to music. He would mimic a musician playing a musical instrument for an admiring audience. I would watch his face while he was listening to music. His facial expression would change from sad to euphoric. So I saved up some money and surprised him on his birthday by presenting him with an MP3 player. He was overjoyed. One day when I was outside, Mom asked Randy to buy her some necessities from the supermarket. So he wore some earbuds so he could listen to his MP3 hands-free on his way to the supermarket. Along the way, he came across some bullies who knew about his quirky personality condition, and they decided to bully him. The gang leader grabbed Randy's MP3, threw it on the ground, and crushed it under his foot, much to the amusement of his laughing gang members. Randy was devastated and ran home crying. When he got home, Mom asked him what was wrong, but he didn't answer. When I returned home, Mom told me about Randy, so I knocked on his door. When he opened it, I saw that he had a black eye. I asked him what had happened, and he told me. I promised to buy him another MP3. One day, I heard live music playing at school, so I entered a room to see where it was coming from. It was from Randy. He was playing a violin that someone had left in the room. He looked at me, but I gestured for him to continue playing, and he did. I was entranced by his wonderful, graceful melody. When he finished, I clapped enthusiastically for him and asked him where he learned to play music. He told me that this was his first time playing music. Wow! I decided to help him develop his fabulous talent, so I told our music teacher about Randy. When I returned home, I searched the internet to learn how to make him a violin. I watched many videos and was able to make a homemade violin in Dad's workshop. Our teacher decided to allow Randy to enter the school's music contest. When I gave Randy my violin as a gift, he cried and hugged me. When he started playing the violin at home, Mom was incredulous. She hugged him and cried tears of joy upon discovering that he had such talent. On the day of the music contest, several students were laughing at him as he was walking to the auditorium, but I encouraged him to ignore them and resolved to do his best. Once he started playing, the whole auditorium went quiet and still. After a while, I could see some students actually crying due to the slow, sad, seesaw strokes on his violin strings. When he finished, he received a thunderous standing ovation. He was clearly amazed at the audience's reaction, and he cried tears of happiness and pride. Afterwards, I hugged him, and he hugged me back. Randy still has a long road to hoe in life, but Mom, Dad, and I will be there to support him on his way to the top.
Hi, I'm Kyle and I'm 24 years old. I've been a weightlifter for over 10 years. This sport runs in my blood. I used to follow the international players and imagine myself in their place. I had a fervent dream of becoming the world weightlifting champion. I've been working towards this goal ever since I was 13 years old. I've trained 5 hours a day for years with the ultimate goal of competing in the Olympic Games. I craved the fame and recognition that would grant me. One of my first early successes was winning a junior championship while representing my city. They called me the Tank due to my impressive strength. All the people around me foresaw a bright future for me. Title after title, contest after contest, my victories inevitably led me to the national championship. The winner of that championship would represent our country in the Olympics. I underwent intensive training to the exclusion of all else. I was so focused. My manager was confident that I could easily win the world championship, and I didn't want to disappoint him. The competition was fierce. I faced numerous fierce competitors, but I defeated them all and reached the final round. The only player left to challenge me was last year's champion, who had never lost a contest. The competition gradually got harder and harder until we reached the point where one of us had to break the world record to beat the other. A crucial tipping point came when I needed to lift a weight that was heavier than I had ever attempted before. There was danger in doing so, and my manager cautioned me to consider if it was worth the risk of serious injury to continue. But I was too driven to heed his warning. I had trained and waited too long for this moment. There's no turning back now, so I bent down and grasped the barbell. I sucked in a deep breath and lifted and heaved with all my might. As soon as I had lifted the weight above my head, I knew immediately that I had overestimated myself. After only a fraction of a second, I felt an excruciating pain in my backbone. A snap. I collapsed under the weight of the barbell and fell flat to the floor with the barbell across my chest pinning me down. The pain in my back was unbearable. I felt as if I were dying. I was taken to the hospital where a doctor diagnosed that I had broken my back at the 4th and 5th vertebrae and that I would never walk again. I tried to kill myself on several occasions, not wanting to live my remaining life in a wheelchair. All my friends, and even my coach, gradually began avoiding me, not wanting to be associated with a loser and a cripple. My mom was the only person who stood by my side and never gave up on me. She helped me with my rehabilitation. Initially, the simple act of lifting a teaspoon felt like I was trying to lift a mountain. After 6 months of intensive physical therapy, a miracle happened. I was able to stand erect for a few seconds. 3 months later, I was able to walk slowly. I began a light training program to get back to my dream. Everybody was shocked that I was determined and foolhardy enough to try to do it all again, but I intended to achieve my dream even if it killed me, which it might very likely do. 2 years later, the scene cuts to Kyle walking out onto the Olympics weightlifting stage to the cheering of thousands of people.